Right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for the information session for the Columbia Climate School's Climate Conversations, the Role of Effective Communication in Creating Change. My name is Laurel Zamashihi. I am the Assistant Director of K-12 and Continuing Education at the Columbia Climate School. So I lead as for professional learning, pre-college, K-12, and educator offerings. And today we're joined by the instructor of the pre-college workshop, Margie, Turrin, and Annunziato from Lamont-Doherty Earth Observatory. And over the next hour or so, you're going to hear from us about the pre-college workshops at the climate school and the specific content that will be shared during this 15-hour pre-college workshop on climate conversations. But as a quick introduction to the climate school, our mission is to develop and inspire knowledge-based solutions and educate future leaders for just and diverse societies on a healthy planet. The school is set up in a way that really allows us to connect, amplify, and advance new areas of climate inquiry, research, and impact across Columbia and beyond. The Columbia Climate School is committed to offer transdisciplinary educational opportunities for graduate, undergraduate, and pre-college students, as we recognize that you all are the next generation of change makers, and you're essential stakeholders in addressing the climate crisis. The pre-college program is for high school students grades 9 through 12 who are interested in expanding their learning in climate and sustainability beyond the classroom. Our college program provides an educational experience for high school students that are passionate about the environment, curious about ways to incorporate climate science and sustainability into every career, and activated to lead change on a local level. These programs offer the same level of rigor and quality as our degree programs, and they're taught by Columbia faculty, researchers, practitioners, educators, and staff. These learning opportunities deliver a high-quality online on a flexible schedule. All of our workshops are 15 hours in length, and they're often English. This particular workshop for the spring 2025 is going to run on Saturdays from March 22nd through May 10th from 10 to 12. And the very last session will be a 3-hour session from 10 to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. This workshop is virtual, and we'll be using Zoom meetings for each session. So it's intended to be very collaborative, lots of participation from the students. Everything is recorded, and participants will have access to the recordings and materials for up to 1 year via coursework. So there's no need to worry about missing a session or worrying about, not being caught up because you have a conflict. You can catch up asynchronously. And then if you need to schedule a office hour visit with Margie and Marisa, you can do that on like a case-by-case basis. There are no required readings or homework, but the instructors will suggest readings or recommended resources for you to check out if you're interested in expanding your learnings on any one topic. And there is a final project that is going to allow you to apply your new knowledge and skills to a real-world scenario. And while there might be tasks that are asked to be completed, like this final project or suggested readings, there is no official grading, which means that there are no transcripts given from Columbia University. This is open enrollment, and there's no application, but there is a registration process. And everyone at the conclusion of this workshop will receive a certificate of participation. But this is credit if you're not a student of Columbia University through the participation of this program. So this workshop costs $1,900 for this spring semester. Reduced rates are available for any students that are former participants of workshops, students that are children of Columbia alumni or faculty or staff, and students of Title I schools. So if this applies to you, free to reach out. And as an attendee of this workshop informational session, you are also eligible to receive 10% discount towards the workshop this spring. So you can email me. It's at learn@climate.columbia.edu. And I would be happy to share that discount code with you, but you have to be here live with us for the info session. So if you're tuning in on YouTube right now, it doesn't count, unfortunately. The deadline to register for this workshop begins 1 week before the workshop starts. So that for this workshop is March 14th. And I think that's it for me. So I do want to just mention that this is a Zoom webinar. So you'll notice that the chat box is disabled, but we do encourage you to ask questions. So the Q&A is open at any point. If you have questions for myself or Margie or Marisa about this workshop, feel free to pop them in and we'd be happy to address them at the end. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Margie and Marisa.
Terrific. Thank you for that. So good afternoon, everyone. It's afternoon for us. Marisa and I share an office. We'll introduce ourselves in a minute, but for the moment, just so you know, we're using the mic on my computer. Marisa has a great teacher voice, so we've never had a problem with that, but we just thought we would let you know. And also just say that we're interested and really excited to kind of hear about why people are participating in this session. I think the time for this session is so critical, and we're excited to have the opportunity to bring it to you. We have not done this class before, so we will be crafting it with you. We have ideas in mind. It's not as if we have no structure, but I think we will be interested in kind of hearing from you and helping to design around it. So the topic is climate communications, the role of effective communication in creating change. We know how important that is, and we're excited to kind of move forward with that. So with that, we'll introduce ourselves. So I'm Margie Turrin. I'm Director of Educational Field Programs here at Lamont-Doherty, which is part of Columbia Climate School. And
hi, everyone. My name is Marisa Annunziato, and I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator here at Lamont-Doherty as well.
great.
And if anyone can't hear me, just pop a note in the Q&A so that I can talk louder or I can move closer to where Margie's sitting so that everyone's able to hear. So we just wanted to start off with talking a little bit about why we think this workshop is so important. Especially with the climate going on today, really talking about climate and effectively communicating climate is so integral for our future. But it's important to note that there's no one size fits all message in climate. So just one graphic or one tagline isn't going to be able to connect with every single person. So we really want to focus on the audiences and the type of messages we really want to convey. So one of the big things is that climate change will vary. So it's not going to impact every location the same. Climate change is going to have different impacts in different regions of the world, even having really big or different impacts in smaller locations. You'd be surprised how close you can be and have different impacts of climate change. And it can also affect you differently based off of your economic situation, your age, or health. So there's a lot of variables in how climate change will affect different populations differently. And so you want to consider that as we're trying to communicate about climate. You also really want to consider that people have different triggers. So some people are really motivated or engaged when you elicit different emotions. So sometimes that's through music or different videos or art will really engage certain people, while other people are really connected to climate when you talk about the impact to wildlife. And so we really want to consider how we can trigger engagement in different populations of people based off of what they're personally interested in. We also want to recognize the fact that every audience comes with their own set of backgrounds and experiences. So, your history, your life so far at this point will influence how you react or respond to different things. And so that needs to be considered as we're creating communication pieces. Effective communication strategies are really critical in creating a climate literate society. So we can't expect any change to happen if people aren't aware of the problems and they aren't fit with the tools to actually make a difference or create change. And so we really, really need to start with education at its foundation of really making changes when it comes to climate change. Youth voice is super important. So we want you guys to be engaged. We want to, give you guys tools and resources to be able to go out into your community, to interact with people, interact with your peers and your family, to really educate them and try to drive change. It's your future and you guys should have a role and a part in really helping to drive change. Historically, sometimes youth isn't involved in decision making or really in any of these plans. And we think that's not right. Youth should really be engaged and be part of this discussion because it is your future. And so that's why we think this is so important to really engage youth and teach them how to effectively communicate about climate. So as Laurel mentioned, there will be a project that we do at the end of the session, and it's really going to focus on you guys creating a personal communication plan. So really targeting what type of change you want to happen in your community and how might you best approach this. And we'll really help you guys think about some of the different approaches that might work best based off of the demographic of where you live and the age groups you're trying to reach. So just a little insight into what these sessions will be like. They're going to be highly interactive. So Margie and I don't like just talking at you guys for the full 2 hours of these sessions. We want it to be a conversation, especially since this workshop is about communication. We want it to be a back and forth conversation. And it's really important that you guys are also having conversations with each other. So we'll do a lot with working independently, but also in groups. So we have taught 2 other pre-college workshop classes, and we have found that a lot of our students love working in breakout rooms with other students in the classes. So we're really going to continue with that approach where we'll do things together as a group. You might do something independently, share in a breakout group, and then share back with us as your instructors. So there'll be a combination of different strategies in learning. And again, just to re-emphasize that teamwork and sharing feedback is really important, especially since this session is focused on communication. And we'll really be helping you guys gain those skills and those resources to be able to actually target and develop your own communication plan at the end.
Okay. So there are a lot of resources that are out there, and each one is just a little bit different. A lot of them are things that we are familiar with, but we anticipate that we'll be doing some additional research as we put the rest of the class together to figure out different pieces that might be useful. But I thought I might just show you a few things that over the years we've been involved in and thought about, and just so that you have a chance to see some of the different pieces that are available to us. So starting on the bottom, we have the Psychology of Climate Change Communication. That's actually a really great handbook that was developed by a center that unfortunately was a Center for Environmental Decision Making. It's not around any longer. It was a National Science Foundation funded center. But they did leave a legacy. So they've left us this really important guiding document, which seems like a heavy term document, but it's really nice in terms of it's broken down into very specific tools and very specific guidelines for how to improve communication. So a really great tool. Beside that, you'll see the framing effect, and that really focuses on thinking about how to frame things. So you can frame things in a positive way, a negative way. You can frame them in a way that poses a question that encourages someone to take action. You can frame them in a kind of a done deal way. So there are different ways of framing. And again, as Marisa mentioned earlier, different people respond to different methods of framing. And this is something that's been researched quite a bit. A lot of this work actually comes from the business community, and they spend a lot of time thinking about how to affect change and how to work with and impact other people. So again, we can learn from some of these different groups and bring that into our climate communications. All the way to the right on the bottom, you'll see an image of a young person about speaking to climate deniers. This is a product that came out of a group that used to be called ACE, and now it's called Our Climate Future. They've been around for a number of years at this point, have really had some tremendous impacts in terms of, so ACE stood for Alliance for Climate Education, and it was very much a youth-focused organization, still is, just has a different title and a little bit of a different approach. But they have developed some tremendous resources, and we'll dig into some of those. Above them, you'll see the Noki image of hands holding the earth. That was a group. It still is a group, but it was a group that was formed around a climate communication partnership to try and help different informal educators think about what are the most effective words, gestures, even gestures, right? It's not just about words, that informal educators can use as they're interacting with the public around climate change. And they developed a variety of different talking points and approaches, which we'll be able to dig into. And then finally, in the center top, we have the Yale Climate Connections. Yale's been doing a tremendous amount of work over the years. They do research. They develop tools, and we'll dig into some of those. And right now they have, I just pulled this from their website, but they have a piece up about how to build resilience in hard times. And so, they really work with the times, they work with the climate of the time, and really pull together to make some really wonderful resources. So these are some of the different resources we'll work with. And then we will work with all of you. So our expectation is that every person will come in with a very different set of needs and a different goal in mind. And that's exactly what we would like. We would like for this to end up being something that you personally will be able to take with you and put into practice. And so we're going to be building a toolbox for you for this plan that Marisa and Laura both mentioned, and that's the Climate Communication Action Plan. So a C-squared AP, if you want to call it that. And so each one of you will be developing one of those. And as you develop, you'll just be kind of tucking away some of these different tools that you might want to use as you develop your plan. So what exactly are we going to be doing? This is a highlight of the seven different weeks that we'll be getting together. Again, some of this might adjust a bit as we get into it and we hear more from the participants in the workshop, because as we've mentioned, our goal is to make this useful and usable for you. So whatever we do will be kind of structured around your input. But just to kind of go through what we have in mind, the first week, of course, we're going to just dive into what is it about climate that you want to communicate? What is the goal that you have in mind? What's your end game, if you will? Have you picked a specific audience out? Are you trying to affect a change? Are you just wanting to be more comfortable in your communications? We all are aware that talking about climate can be difficult, challenging, and a lot of people avoid it for that reason. But this is not the time to avoid it. This is the time for us to have these conversations. And so pulling our strategies together will be important. So again, that will be our first class. Then our second one will be focusing on developing an effective climate communication action plan, and kind of an introduction to what it is that we're talking about when we say, what do those words mean? And what is it that you're hoping to take away from it? And then we'll kind of think about what does that toolbox look like for you? Like, do you have just one kind of tool in your toolbox, or do you want to have a range of different tools? And that will depend again on your audience. Then we're going to look at a whole range of different communication strategies. There are many, many out there. Do you want to go into inspiring first? Do you want to start in with facts? Everybody has a different approach, but we'll kind of go through what we found to be effective, what researchers have found to be effective. Are we going to think about storytelling, past, present, future? What do we want to do? Are we wanting to think just about the future? Do you really want people to recognize immediate impacts? Those are all really important in terms of developing your plan. Then we're going to look at some different platforms the next week. So what are some of the platforms that are available to us? We can use music, we can use art, we can use graphs, we can use we can use video. Again, there are many, many different platforms, and they're changing all the time. We're seeing new platforms emerge, and we're seeing other platforms that are folding or being stepped away from. So again, this is really important. And again, one of the things that I will emphasize is a lot of the platform that you select will be who it is you want to reach. Do you want to reach people that you already know? Do you want to reach people that you think already think like you and reinforce them, because there's nothing wrong with that? Or do you want to try and connect with people that might have a divergent perspective? that will absolutely affect where you go. Excuse me. Then the next week, we're going to kind of look at data. We're going to think about, what does the data tell us? What's missing in the data? Are there other places we can go to look for some of this data? And there are groups that have been collecting data about the impact of different types of communication, and we're going to really dig into some of that to see what they have to say and how that might apply to you in your area. Because as I think Laurel mentioned, we found that we have students from a range of different locations, and that really adds to the conversation. That really helps with in terms of making things a lot richer. If we were all coming from the same area, I think it wouldn't be quite as interesting in terms of learning from each other. And that, by the way, is a really important thing to us, is that we all learn from each other. We learn a lot from you, and hopefully you'll take a lot away from us as well. And then finally, what can we learn from communicating with unique audiences? We work a lot in the polar regions. There are some very unique audiences in the polar regions. Not all of them are the same. They're all very different. And having an opportunity to communicate with groups that are very different from ourselves is a really powerful experience, and it's a really rich learning experience because they don't hear us the same way often. We have to use different tools. We can't just chat with them. Often we need to use imagery and other resources to be able to communicate. So again, there's a lot we can take away from that. And then our final week will be your turn to share what you have developed in terms of your climate communication action plan. And over a 6-week, or excuse me, well, it would be a 6-week period at that point, because this would be your delivery. We don't expect you to have a completed action plan, but we are hoping that you have framed it so that we could each of us hear a little bit about what the others have planned. And we will invite some experts to join us and see if they have some opportunity or some things that they can share and kind of encourage you and maybe to think just a little bit differently or expand a bit. So that's our session structure as we see it now.
And just to reiterate some of the logistics of the workshop session, Laurel already touched on a lot of this, but all of the sessions will be over Zoom. And as I mentioned before, it'll be a mixture of us sharing some information, whether that be via slides or videos or other visual materials. But we will focus heavily on doing activities and having group discussions. Everything will be taught in English. And again, this workshop session is focused on high school students who are really interested in wanting to improve their ability to communicate climate change. And on the right, you can see the list of dates. It'll span from late March into early May. Every workshop is 2 hours from 10 to noon Eastern Standard Time, except that last session will be a 3-hour session from 10 to 1. So that you guys have ample time to share your climate communication plan and get feedback from some professionals. And we just wanted to then open it to you guys asking some questions. But we have 2 of these cute little graphics on the right. So these are 2 different ways that you can communicate a similar topic. So looking at, the impact of greenhouse gases on Earth and really warming Earth. So you can even think about like what in this visual is really speaking to you or connecting with you, because every person is going to be sort of enticed to look at a different part of this visual. So with that, we'll open it to you guys to ask some questions. And if you want to even add some things to the Q&A about how you feel about this visual, we welcome that as well.
And I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see what's going on here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Margie and Marisa. I'm really excited for this workshop. I think, as you said, it comes at a really important time. I think students are looking at action locally, and every action that is I get this question all the time. They're like, what's the one most important thing I can do to help climate? And I unfortunately have to tell them it depends. It depends on what you're interested in, what skills you bring to the table. But if there is one thing that we can all do, it's educate more about and educate people more about climate. And so I think the tools that they're going to gain from this workshop are going to just like launch them into their climate journey. So feel free to Q&A if you do have any questions. I don't see any at the moment, but we're happy to talk about the workshop. We're happy to talk about the structure or the content or our backgrounds, whatever you're interested in.
I'm reading how everybody was so great about saying they could hear us, so I appreciate that.
It is helpful. Thank you, everyone. While we're waiting for some questions to rise, I just wanted to give you a little bit more background on the pre-college virtual workshops. So we've been running these since 2020. Most, if not all of our past workshop topics are on our website. So I urge you to take a look at some of the last topics that we had. And we really find that these workshops are incredible way for students from outside of New York, all across the country, all across the world, to be able to engage in some of the topics that they might be talking about in their classroom. And also, as Margie and Marisa are saying, engage with each other, because a lot of the students that have lived experiences all over the world, they have a lot to share, and we're constantly learning from our students as well. So it really creates an incredible environment for us all to learn from each other. And there's plenty of opportunities for students to also share their, expertise with each other and us through breakout rooms and activities. So I think that's like a very valuable piece of the workshop.
I agree. And I would also add that we were so impressed with the cohort of students that we had in our most recent workshop and how motivated they were to create change. And they each came from a very different experience, different area, different background, and their projects were very different. But each one just really was motivated to do something to create change. And that's inspiring to us. And it also really helps us to recognize that there's a network of energy that is, that's available to really create a change.
Great. We do have a question. How many students usually enroll per cohort? It kind of varies. We try and keep the groups relatively small, so there is a lot of time for discussion. We want all the students to be able to really be able to communicate with Margie and Marisa as well as with each other. So it could range anywhere from around like 8 to 15 students. And again, that is a student body that is from all over the world, which is pretty great. I think we had 3 or 4 countries represented in the last workshop. Is that right, Margie?
Yeah, I think we had 4, which was really wonderful because everybody brought a different set of experiences and skills.
Sure. So the pricing for this workshop across 15 hours is $1,900. That is, allowing students to be a part of this workshop, but it also gives students access up to a year for all the video recordings and the resources shared by Margie and Marisa via Courseworks. So up to a year after the workshop ends. We do have discounts. As I mentioned, everyone here will be getting a 10% discount. Just reach out to me in the email that I put in the chat. If you are a student from a Title I school, if you are a past participant in our pre-college workshops or programs, if you're a student of a Columbia alumni or a student of Columbia staff or faculty, you also have discounts. These percentages range. So reach out to me with any questions that you have. We will ask for, just proof of that category, and then you'll get a specialized discount code that you can use during registration. Any other questions from folks? Oh, perfect. Oh, no, you're welcome.
Um, Well, I would, if there aren't questions, and it's totally fine, we'll give you a moment to think about it. But, can you tell me examples of projects? Is that, so
Oh,
we can, yeah, we can address that. So, a project to us would be a plan, basically, that you would have to work with a specific audience, a specific group. You might have picked doing something with your community. So it would be trying to infuse communications in a local board, for example. We have community groups that are designed to tackle climate. They don't have necessarily youth representation. And so developing tools and communication pieces that you could use in reaching out to them would be one thing. Or you could be wanting to go to a local government group, like a city council in our area, or it could be another group from another area, and talk with them to try and create change around climate, change some behavior, install some peace. It could be a plan to do that. So it would be compiling a resource plan of specifically things that we've talked about, approaches that we have that you would be using. What we would like to come out of this is you having a stepping stone, a platform to just be able to take this forward. So we had a similar kind of project from a student, all of our students from the again, a prior session. It had a different approach, different look, but it was about sustainability. And we've heard back from some of those students about how they have taken it forward and how they have been using some of these resources to try and create change. So hopefully that's enough of a direction. I think that they will be unique, and so I can't tell you specifically what it would look like. But Gina, if you have, if that doesn't answer it, let us know and I'll try again.
yeah, I just wanted to share also, one of the first steps of students seeking action is board support, because not do any of them at work alone, really need to leverage multiple skills and networks. So the first step in many cases of a climate action plan is onboard support, how to communicate your project and how to get people excited about it. So I think a lot of the skills from this workshop are going to directly translate into that. And then when it comes to thinking about like, okay, so that's step one, how are we building out this team that's going to make this project a reality? Then there are other components that you have to think about, like timelines and funding, and if you need permits, or who needs to be in the room when you're making these decisions. Some of those pieces we might not get to in the 15 hours, but Margie and I were chatting, the summer program, which is the Columbia Climate School in the Green Mountains, it's an in-person pre-college program over the summer. We have the 2 weeks to really help students build out that climate action plan. They then share it back to us, like Columbia experts and their peers, to get feedback on how they could even improve it, with the goal of them taking that project back home and making it happen. And then we have an alumni network of students that touch base with us, share about the successes, the challenges, how they were able to overcome those hurdles. So you can see that the goal is really to help students in every step of their climate action journey through virtual workshops as well as the in-person pre-college workshops. So I think it kind of folds nicely into both projects here.
Yeah, and I just to reiterate what you said, I think identifying stakeholders, people that can work with you, is a really important thing. Can be a lonely mission if you're on it all by yourself, and so trying to figure out who thinks like you, who could work with you, who might complement you. You don't have to be exactly the same as this partnership or stakeholder, but those are some things that we'll think about, talk about, and try and identify for you. So, yeah, I think that's really great.
Perfect. Gina also asked, can you share any examples of successes and challenges after your workshop?
Yeah, so I will say that I just heard from one of our cohort about a challenge that they had experienced. And I think one of the things that's really important to keep in mind is the timeline that we might want for some of these changes to occur does not always align with decision making at a municipal or a park or an organizational level. And I think that was the challenge that they were facing. They had a really solid plan, and we were very supportive of their plan and are still working with them. So again, that's kind of one of these things. It's not as if you spend this time with us and we launch you and we never hear from you again. We do want to hear back from you and see how this goes. And so I expect that ultimately we'll be able to get a success out of this, but it could take longer than perhaps the student had in mind. And so they were very interested in creating some resilience in one of their local parks. But you can't just walk into a park and start creating change. It takes working with other groups. And so that was one of the challenges. In terms of successes, from this particular project, I haven't heard, but we have worked with other projects in the past where we've seen students who have actually presented ideas that they have put together in their projects to a local governing board. And they have had an impact with them in terms of helping open the eyes to a lot of people that are on these decision-making boards do not have the strength of environmental science background that I think a lot of our youth do. And they haven't had the opportunity to spend so much time thinking about and planning on these. They make a lot of decisions and they deal with a lot of things, and they have a lot of external stressors. And so having the opportunity for youth to go in and express their ideas and share a different perspective can actually have an effect, and it has had an effect in a local decision-making situation.
That's incredible. And also, Margie and I and Marisa, we worked with a group of students locally outside of Lamont in Rowan County. Summer research program they're part of, they identified that there's just so much trash and fishing debris was littering the pier we went to every day for the program. And so the students, this is a communication tactic. They created using the kind of bright eye-catching graphics that they then shared with the town of Piermont to share like, hey, this is a problem that we're seeing. It's a real issue for the wildlife. We've seen it happen. Can we print these and have these posted along the mile-long pier? And they did it. They were able to create that project and make it happen. And now they're still up there notifying people that there are trash cans in these designated locations. Please don't just throw your fishing line, et cetera, elsewhere. So I think that was a huge win. And to Margie's point, I have the same challenge with some of the students I work with, timeline. Like students want things to happen so fast. They live in such a fast world. So there was a student that from freshman year to senior year was working with her green team and was able to get this new development, which was going to be an ice rink, to include in the proposal a solar panels on the top. And she was like, I can't believe I worked for 4 years and there aren't solar panels on any of the buildings in town. Like I worked for 4 years on this and there isn't one solar panel. And the teacher was like, no, you have to take this as a win because they're including it in their plans now. That is huge. And so I think timeline can always be a challenge because we want things to happen so fast and we need them to happen fast, but that needs to go home as a win for that student. And that is change. That's tangible change. And then one other thing I want to share, sorry, I'm getting excited about the successes of the workshop. Last workshop was on sustainable planning, and one of the students from that workshop was so inspired by the content and kind of knew that he wanted to work in a sustainable space. But after the workshop, then applied and got accepted at Columbia College and is going to focus his major on sustainable planning and design, which I just think is so incredible. So that was the workshop that Margie and Marisa taught last spring.
Don't ever be sorry for questions, Gina.
We love them.
Really questions.
Yeah. How are your advisors sensitive to what students can do when working with certain countries? Well, so first of all, we do not, I don't know what country you're in, and I don't know that we will know a lot about your country, but I think that we try and take the lead from the students who are involved in this. So we had a student from Belgium, we had someone from Korea. I don't even remember where the others were from, but we had several
Thailand?
different, say it again, Brazil, right?
Oh, Thailand, I think.
What was it?
Someone was
Oh, from London. Yeah, London. I can't remember. But anyway, we were very unfamiliar with South Korea and we're very interested in hearing from Pao about what his experiences were. And so we would let that person take the lead, if you will, in terms of helping us to learn about their community, and then we can do some additional research. But I think it's really important. And this is something that I think was one of weeks 5 or 6 in our plan, was learning about communicating with people in other countries, other communities. We are not the experts on everything. No one person or one group is, and so it's important to listen. Listening is huge. And actually, every climate communication starts by listening. That's the number one ticket, frankly.
Absolutely. There was a question, and I just wanted to read it out loud. So I was mentioning that the C² AP project for this workshop is a really nice feeder into the project for the Green Mountains, but it does not mean that this is a prerequisite for Green Mountains. I just want to be clear. I think it will help students start thinking about their project early and start building it out. So they'll have more legs and a foundation to work from, but certainly they're not a prerequisite. There actually aren't any prerequisites for the Green Mountains program. That's a good question.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Last call, but thank you, Margie and Marisa. Thank you for spending the past 45 minutes sharing about this workshop. I think it's going to be really incredible. And everyone who joined us, thank you for joining us today. There will be a recording. It will go up on YouTube. So if there's anything that you wanted to go back to or, share with your peers, feel free to do so. And we're always available for questions via email. So thank you,
Amazing.
everyone. Yeah,
Thank you.
take care.
Bye.
Bye.